Sometimes a story doesn't live up to its potential, either via a singular core issue with the series or a slew of minor problems that add up to a disappointing experience. The issue with this anime, titled I Want to Escape from Princess Lessons, is that it fundamentally fails at one of those core issues. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a series I've overall enjoyed for a good laugh. It certainly isn't a miserable series to watch. However, if you're trying to sell this as a romance anime, you'll have a hard time because the main love interest elicits violent rebuke from the viewer. And a lot of people will likely disagree with me about this being good for a reason that I honestly 100% agree with. The story goes that Leticia Dorman is the daughter of a small noble house, and is very much a tomboy who enjoys being out in nature. She's very strong-willed, free-spirited, and just likes the calm life that she has in her family home. But at a young age, she's chosen to be the crown prince's future wife and is spirited away from her family home to be subject to the insane and stifling regimen of etiquette lessons that are princess lessons. Now, this is where the series does its best, actually. The first episode of the series starts out as a very depressing display of watching Leticia's lively nature die out as she's forced to abandon everything she loves just because she was arbitrarily chosen to be married into the royal family. It shows how soul-crushing her experience actually is, and how dead inside she feels living this way. And all of that is done to set up the dramatic turnaround when she assumes her engagement is over at a party and suddenly comes back to life once she finally feels free again. It was honestly a nice swing from sad to hilarious that had me looking forward to the more rom-com elements as Clark, the prince she was engaged to, would try to win her back while she got up to a bunch of random shenanigans. After all, the most fun this series gets is when it decides to goof off and just have fun, rather than trying to deal with the dramatic aspects of it, and the countryside town would have been a good setting to distance yourself from the gloomy atmosphere of Leticia's past. But unfortunately, that's not what happens in this show. Letty immediately gets taken back to the palace, only for her to be put under progressively stricter confinement as she attempts to escape over and over again. Rather than a fun series about Letty trying to catch up on the 10 years of her life she missed out on because of those princess lessons, we basically get more of her being confined against her will and failing to capitalize on the series' most promising aspect. From there, it spends several episodes making Clark out to be a very clingy and possessive person, one who basically becomes a thorn in Letty's side because all she wants is her freedom, while he tries to keep her caged in because of his one-sided love for her. It very much comes off as a Stockholm romance, where I only really feel sorry for Letty getting locked up and forced into a relationship. There's a very rare island of stability in there where they decide to do a whole comedy episode focused entirely on one random escapade in the castle, involving ghosts and booby traps. But that is just one episode that doesn't have the looming problem of the depressing elements of Letty's life hanging over it. And that is promptly followed by something that just makes me feel bad for Letty again. For a rom-com anime, Clark fails as a love interest for a good chunk of the show because he's more punchable than endearing. It does a terrible job of selling him as a likable guy because he really just seems self-centered and annoying, like he doesn't even think about Letty at all. And that overbearing, almost controlling even, element to him was a huge turnoff. I can genuinely see why people hate it, and I even agree with the reason for that hate. It delivered something other than what I had imagined it would end up being based on that first episode. It's hard to enjoy the show when the primary love interest, which is a huge chunk of the series, feels so unlikable through half the show. Though he has gotten better in the past few episodes as his relationship with Letty builds and she seems to enjoy life at the palace more and more. Still, I feel as though the issues with many of the characters lacking strong, endearing qualities is a huge negative for this show. It really just makes the series out to be focused on making Letty suffer more than anything else. All the side characters are really only around because they play off of Letty's antics a bit, and, well, they're there to keep her in the palace because that's what they profit from the most. But for all the complaining I've said here, there genuinely are some good comedy moments scattered throughout the show. It can be pretty funny, and thus fairly entertaining. and it has turned it around a bit over the last few episodes, as it seems more and more like Letty is choosing this life while falling in love with the more controlled version of Clark. It is entertaining in its own right when it's not making you feel as though Letty is being treated unfairly by everyone around her and held against her will to do things that are utterly soul-crushing to a free spirit like hers. So, it's good for a laugh and some shenanigans, and the latter half does sort of do away with the depressing elements, so it has gotten better.